For far too long, environmental policies are lacking or simply non-existent because they are in the hands of the government. Scientists' warnings are shut down, and so are our livelihoods to breathe clean air. This has to stop exclusively by having panels of experts to topple down bureaucratic government and conventional politicians. Fight for a better future, fight for human life. Three setups at the top. 1. What a status quo looks like. General policies are enacted and decided fully on the government. Note, politicians in parliament have about 4 or 5 years to guarantee that the policy stays true to what they campaign and give concrete proof, which is why it's quite hard to enact environmental policies in status quo since the benefit accrued after their seat is taken by someone else. The comparative on Gov is we want experts like scholars, environmentalists, scientists with actual data that could give evidences of a problem and give the most effective solution, not like, oh, we should walk more instead of using private cars, but more of building green infrastructures, a cohabitation with the environment, and stricter policies for companies. Even if there's a likelihood that our livelihood comes at a sacrifice, A. Environmentalists are still human, they can make policies depending on areas they want to protect and deem capable of running the policies, but B. There are counterbands from other policies like rights to live or welfare acts that will balance out the environmental policies if it gets too harsh. Second, this debate should come at a middle ground understanding of the importance of environment. That is to say, OP cannot come and reject the idea that people are supporting environmental policy and are actually stuck in their conventional ways. If that's the case, the benefit could be tangible on both sides. So there's some level of understanding from the people to support the panel of experts on Gov. Lastly, this debate is not about environment versus people. It's about which side could give better solution for environmental problems. If OP can prove a better way than Gov, OP fails this debate. With that being said, two arguments in speech. One, why it's more feasible to create environmental policies under Gov. Second, why can it bring awareness of environmental problems under Gov. First argument then, on feasibility of environmental policies. This is true on Gov for three things. One, it is very hard to ponder and prioritize the environmental problems to become policies. For the environmental problems to pass a bill, we need to propose it to the government. However, the government tends to not understand the magnitude of the impact of harms or simply choose not to care because they're not willing to sacrifice the other sectors that benefit them, i.e. more infrastructure for factors, or they actually need companies to fund their campaign, so they prefer to pander to companies instead. Even if we can, it takes a long time, i.e. bureaucracy is a pain because you need to start at the lowest point with other social problems and they need to discuss if you propose this were to pass the bill because there's limited policy they could pass on to. Secondly, there's a difference in the transfer of problems in the room of discussion. These look like differences in politicians and ideologies clash in the room of discussion. We think pollution made by companies are bad, but some things it's not a worthy trade-off for a proliferation of industrial business in the area, or some suggest that the community of village couldn't have changes like greener ways of living and etc. This could go on and on without resolution at the end. Therefore, it's hard to make people understand environment is a worthy problem to give action to. Lastly, on a comparison. With a panel of experts, it's easier to immediately pass the bill. As stated in the setup, this scientist is an independent actor with no political background, so they don't turn off some voters, and they are able to assess the big data of a nation to assess and evaluate the problem and solution. Then, after discussing their solution with other environmentalists, they could give the proposal and be directly implemented out without bureaucracies or conflicts from other politicians with different ideologies. This is important for two things. A. Environment is a time-sensitive subject. Once you mine and extract resources on the ground, that ground is no longer viable for crops. Once you pollute a river with methane, it can no longer be consumed, and source of food like fish or seafood is damaged. All of these problems are permanent. You cannot reverse your action and heal the land. There's no alternative that can make a polluted river better. That's why it's urgent to immediately stop the factory from giving indigenous people methane poisoning and give them access to make crops to fill their stomachs so they won't die of starvation. B. Companies don't have the option to grab a politician, so they can run away with creating more pollution because the one who holds companies accountable are the panel of experts, who is not dependent on companies unlike politicians they can be lobbied under all. Second layer then, why even if policies are symmetrically made on both sides, why is government policies better? Three things. One, there's more critical point of views. Since scientists take into account their worldview in general, there's a myriad of scientists who hear of different things, such as the animals, the forest, the preservation of floras and faunas. There's a more precise policy that could be enacted rather than, oh, we should use more paper straws, we should stop using plastics. These generic policies will only reduce some environmental degradation at best, but will not help increase environmental rehabilitation. Secondly, better check and balance under Gov. Scientists can reject the idea of rhetoric politicians who made assumption that the environment could last. They are needed in making policy exactly because most politicians make economic policies because the benefits very fast even before their reign ends. So politicians are making more budget for small companies, they clear up land so more factories can be built, they let companies not be prosecuted because they need their donation for campaigns. There's no check and balance on OP, but on Gov, There's no dependency for companies, and scientists care about the green in leaves far more than the green in dollars. Lastly, there's more room for revision. These experts will probably stay for a long time in the panel of experts. Even if they don't, they will have other experts who feel like the policies are not enough and have the incentive to make better revision for the policies to make sure the environment they love is not going to waste. So there's more room for revision if the policy is not as effective as they thought. Thirdly, let's talk about preemptive. What might break, right? Clashes that might occur in this debate is on the extreme of environmental policies. 4 responses then. 1. We say this will not happen. Stated in its setup, these panels of experts will stay with the people who care for the rights of human beings because in their POV, we are also animals who deserve the right to live. Secondly, even if it does, other policy will counterbalance their proposal, and we flip this logic. Exactly if people are unable to fulfill the criteria of environment policies, there are more incentive to protest and demand the government on greener alternatives. Things like subsidies in using greener products because they tend to be more expensive than plastic, right? So the government can give them environmental friendly products to use, and with habituation, people will be more used in using green products like recyclable paper or tumblers, for example. And don't bring the argument that government is poor, that's nonsense. Third, on a worst case, we do inflict harm for underprivileged people. We say this is symmetric over the indigenous people we protect, because the people are truly the actors who are the most vulnerable in case of environmental degradation, because their survival is contingent on forest rivers and animals surrounding them, which is finite. Underprivileged communities still have welfare programs and donation and funding from the government, while they had none. They are more important in weighing for the most vulnerable. But lastly, on a comparison, OP loses both indigenous people and underprivileged people on the ground once they couldn't give a solution for the environment. When they are not able to breathe because they are surrounded in factories that produce heavy smoke by the second, and paper store cannot help them survive. Therefore, our environmental policies help both actors to live. Moving on to the second argument, why can I bring awareness of environmental problems? The premise of this argument is to counter OP's likelihood of individuals' drive to vote for environmental policies. The problem is there's no incentive for them to do so because there's not enough awareness of the danger of pollution or deforestation. This is true for 2 things. 1. The majority of people still like communal benefit. That is to say, people are more selfish by the day to do capitalism or the incentive to be rich and climb the social ladder that politicians have made by enacting all those econ policies. Because of this, the competition to be at the top is rough, and people are less caring about their surroundings and prefer to think about themselves and their family. I don't care if the earth is dying, I can live on the 13th floor and no pollution could reach me. That's the mindset that people have. Especially when environmental act requires you to stop building factories, people reject the idea to help because it sabotages their plan to be at a more financial advantage places. Second, even if social media is portraying the environment is dying, people's initiative are, oh, I can share this post, I'll delete my emails, and I'll tell my friends that this is an important issue. But there's no concrete action that you did. That's not going to result in any benefit. Look around you. People understand the world is dying, but they are not doing anything about it. Their sense of responsibility is simply discussing about this issue and think, I've done my part. That awareness happened on OP, and that brings no benefit at all to the environment. Actual people who will invest in environment and protest on the ground is scarce. And that's exactly how we can change the perspective of people on golf. Because we put panel of experts of environmentalists, we shout that it's an important issue and you're obligated to do this because you can have a better future. People are more incentivized to listen and understand what they must do. If you want to fight for a better future, then fight for team golf.